introduction to the data snapshot, how you've seen it used, and then we'll have a couple more questions and then we'll go into your demo.
Okay, there we go. Can we see the screen? My screen okay?
I see your picture still.
Well, thank you very much, Tim. You can hear me fine as well?
I can hear you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for letting me talk today. As I think you mentioned, I've got a background of over 30 years of working with companies across many sectors in terms of putting their information management together and working with roadmaps. And I've lived through a lot of the early days of data warehousing and a lot of failure, so hence a lot of gray hair. But what I want to talk about today was, and I refer to it as the humble snapshot, because it's the answer to a lot of interesting questions that we run into in the data management space. And I think it's a core component or foundational to a data architecture. And I'll walk through why I think that. But first, let's talk about what it is. To my way of thinking, a snapshot is taking a point in time snapshot of your data. So in other words, I've got a source system that's got lots of information about my organization in it, and I'm just going to take it and snapshot it and take a copy of it. So it's very important that we think about it as a point in time. It's static, it's not live. And that's the beginning of us separating our information access layer from our transactional processing layer. It's a fundamental step as you go through your data roadmap, because you generally start off doing reporting from your live systems. But it also allows us to take that specific point in time snapshot of the information, and that's when we talk about end of day or end of business. What's my month end look like? What was my year end look like? Obviously, it comes a lot from an accounting perspective. We're keeping those end of month, end of years from a book of business perspective is extremely important. But the other aspect of it that's important is it's a complete copy of all the information that you have. So you're not going in there and hand selecting just pieces of information that are important to the business today. You're taking a snapshot of absolutely everything that you've got, because you really don't know what's going to be important in the future. And we'll sort of look at this as I walk through some data roadmaps, a data roadmap discussion in a second. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a data snapshot. Point in time, complete copy of your source information. And why would you want to create a data snapshot? Well, if you go back to the business requirements, there's a number of advantages to taking the information off of the source system, not the least of which, if you're ever trying to balance something, well, my sales in the morning are different than my sales in the afternoon. Numbers keep changing. Oh, I looked at it late last night and this morning it's different again. So when you're going against the source system, the numbers can always be changing, and it's very difficult to get at, okay, this is what it looked like at the end of business. So a snapshot's a really good way of literally taking a photograph of what your business looks like. And then historical trending. Well, how do I doing day over day? Am I getting worse or better? Well, if you have a snapshot, you have them both at exactly the same time. You can go back over time and put them together, whether it's looking at a monthly snapshot, a daily snapshot, a weekly snapshot. So it's almost like taking those single images and turning it into a moving picture. I can look at my change over time, and a lot of things come out. If a picture's worth 1,000 words, looking at things from a trending perspective and looking at that moving picture of your organization can be even more valuable. And then that leads us to, well, I want to track my performance KPIs. Well, if I have end of month snapshots of my business, it's very easy for me to feed that into monitoring my key performance indicators. And the consistent view of the business. If I take a look at my end of yesterday, and I were counting up my total balances in my system, and I do it for that same day a year from now, I'm going to get exactly that same number. So the consistency of the data is extremely important, especially in the accounting world. And this is where I think it starts to take a very interesting turn. If you're getting into analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, these are very data intensive exercises, and they need a lot more than just key performance indicator data or metrics information. They need to take a look at the entire breadth and depth of the information to find those patterns in the data. And if you've ever worked with data scientists or analytics people, and you can sit there for hours gathering requirements, and we need this data, and we need this data, and there's always one requirement at the end of the day. Before everybody leaves the room, they say, well, I need access to all the data all the time. And it's always the final requirement that's really difficult to fulfill. But taking a snapshot will make sure that you keep all your data and it's available to them all the time. And it's a very quick and easy way of fulfilling that data scientist's need to be able to access data down the road. And then the other thing I find where this really comes up is when data scientists are looking at the historical, that moving picture, if they take a picture of their customer and you've got lots of data in it, you can start to understand that customer or member or that client's state over time, and you start to understand their life cycle. What are they buying? When are they buying? What are their behaviors? What happened before the behavior? So maybe I'll be able to predict it. So being able to understand a member or a customer or client's life cycle throughout all of those snapshots, it can be absolutely and completely invaluable from a data science perspective. And I know, Tim, you've done some seminars on data science. So that's where a data snapshot can fit in. But let's talk about, or the value that it can add. But where have I seen it fit into the flow? Well, I like to talk about the data journey that a lot of organizations go through. And I have this picture in my mind when I'm talking to an organization of sort of where are they on their data journey? And I'll say this right off the bat, where they are on the data journey, I think, is extremely important. That wherever they are, it needs to match the business needs. You don't want to be, you don't want the data journey to be leading the business because then you're going to be building things like a data warehouse that no one's going to use. You build a data warehouse when people need it. So lining the data journey with the business journey is extremely important. But let's start off with where some people start, and that is you've got a source system. It comes in, it's got all sorts of pre-built reports. The data starts coming out, and you run the reports, and it shows you all sorts of interesting things about your business, all from that same source system. And they're built around what that system is, whether it's your book of business, whether it's your accounting system, or whatever. But what happens to a lot of organizations, and especially today, where lots of cloud organizations are coming out with bespoke or niche applications that a lot of organizations are using for very specific tasks, is you start to develop a whole bunch of source systems. So I might have my book of business, I might have a CRM somewhere else in the cloud, I might have my marketing application somewhere else. And there just seems to be more and more data being spread out across more and more systems. So of course, people start going and, well, I've got to extract my Excel spreadsheet from this system, my Excel spreadsheet from that system. And some small organizations I've talked to have 20 and 30 different applications that they go to and extract data from today. So what can I do? Well, they want to centralize their data. Well, an easy way of centralizing the data is going and doing a data snapshot, because you're not trying to identify all the different elements that are important. You're just saying, hold on, let's go make a copy. Let's go take a photograph. Once you've taken that copy, then you can start using business intelligence tools and analytics tools to create stories about your organization. You can solve problems. You can do data to support your decision systems. It's also a great landing zone because off of that data, you start to build off, well, if I'm doing a lot of KPIs and dashboards, I want them to go quickly. I'll pull data from those snapshots and maybe integrate them into some data marts for very specific aspects of my business. Well, now I've got some integrated data. Well, now I want to drive and have a complete view of my business. So I want to build a data warehouse. And when you're building a data warehouse, a lot of the early failures in that business was that you try to build a data warehouse around every single piece of data, and you end up going down the 4 and 5 year road. So really, you want to build out a data warehouse that has an integrated view of your business, an authoritative view of your data, which could include data quality and data mastering, for the very specific and important information that you're using on an everyday basis. You don't want to do that to all your information. But I've got those data scientists still. So what do I do with those snapshots? Well, that complete copy of the data, really the snapshot is the early foundation of what I view as the data lake. A data lake in my mind being defined as basically saving all of your data to a large big data device, and then you can run and extract and look at that information and sample it for artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques. And if you're going to be putting those two together, then of course what you've built yourself is a data lake house, especially if you've integrated your data lake with your data warehouse. which is it's a modern way of having the best of both worlds. And then the CEO walks into your offices and says, hey, I want to do some real-time streaming. Can you pull that from the data warehouse? But I want to capture real-time events and take action while the customer's in the building and avert crises. And it's like, oh, okay, we hit a roadblock. So let's back up. Well, going back to the real-time data in my source systems, a lot of people offer API or application interfaces where I can pull data and exchange information. So I might want to start integrating that when my CRM gets an order, I take that order and I put it into my core system. And from my core system, when it gets fulfilled, I might send it to my billing and receiving. So I can start to integrate my applications to work like a whole. But now I'm connected to this real-time flow of information that might be valuable to the business. So I might want to give business access to a real-time view of the business information, integrated view, and an agile data fabric. And then I can take that streaming business information and use it for analytics. And then I can tie that to all of that insights I've gained from my data warehouse, and I can get my real-time streaming, and I've got my bingo. So we solved that problem as well. But if you notice, throughout all of this data journey and all the different aspects and all the problems I've solved, analytics and machine learning is ubiquitous across all of it. I want to be able to do analytics, machine learning off of my data lake. I want to do it off of my data warehouse. I want to do it off of my streaming information. So that's an important aspect of the modern data infrastructure architecture, is that analytics isn't standing to the side anymore. Analytics needs to be integral to my entire data architecture and fabric, if that makes sense. But this whole journey that I've been talking about and all the different problems that it solves along the way all started from that centralized point of, hey, let's separate my source information and start treating that as a valuable asset and start taking snapshots of it. So it all started with that humble snapshot and adding value to the system. So Tim, back to you.
Yep. Let me really quick. Yeah, and I appreciate that because yeah, again, I appreciate your connection back to what value that these things bring, because we do talk about data journeys a lot with our clients as well and the people that we are working with. And everybody's journey is different. So we have people that sometimes come to us and say, we need a data warehouse. And of course, our first question is, why? What value is going to give you? What are you looking to do? Or, you know, we need to do MDM. And then of course we have to kind of drill into what, because there's, and as all of us do, we keep hearing all these buzzwords and everybody keeps telling us, Gartner and all these people tell us these are the things you need. Everybody's journey is different. Everybody's need is different. So to keep things moving along, thank you, Gufran, to keep me from taking up too much time. Let's go into this question again. This is the same question we had before. I was curious if anybody would change after hearing Keith, as far as any kind of walk through the data journey and specific to some of the things he's talked about. After hearing Keith, where do you think you are on your data journey? And we kind of phrased it a little bit different in a percentage, 0, 25, 45, 65, or 85. And you can kind of see the explanations there. And Ron, I think we could probably go ahead and end this to keep things moving. Everybody should have, by the time I read through it, have enough time to answer it. All right, good deal. 45%. Again, this still pretty matches with what we had said before. And a lot of people are moving through. Okay, perfect. The other question I had about this was, you know, where does your data reside? And again, this will be a really quick one for people on-premise, all in the cloud, or hybrid on-premise and cloud data infrastructure, both of those two kind of hybrid together. So before I go ahead with that one, again, this one should be a very quick one with 3 quick options. We found it, and go ahead and end it when you're ready. We found that, you know, this question is not quite black or white anymore. And some of you guys may have been around for the data fabric conversation we had, where there are lots of blends of these type of architectures. But we do have some for different reasons who want to be all on premise. And then a lot of people who just feel like they don't want to manage any environments on their own. All right, are we up? Still waiting on results. All right, very cool. And again, kind of in line with the same conversations we had. More people are doing hybrid stuff these days where they have, even if it's applications you use like Salesforce or some of those other ERP applications that are all in the cloud, and you still have some on-premise stuff that you're trying to work, and you have a combination of those. A lot of people again are getting all in the cloud. So definitely. And then I think there will always be a need for all on-premise. All right, Keith. So I won't continue to take up the time because I know we're running through time. But I wanted to get those questions in the way. I'll let you kind of dig into, and so Keith is going to actually show us in Data Migrator, a tool which, again, if you're a web-focused client, you already have access to. You may or may not be familiar with it. If you're not, this will be a quick introduction to it. If you are, hopefully he'll show you some things that maybe you didn't know, or just kind of explain, his thoughts on how he's been using it with different clients. Go ahead, Keith.
Thanks, Tim. So yeah, it's TIBCO's Web Focus comes with complete data management capabilities within it. Not a lot of people use it, so that's why I wanted to show a little bit about it. So for those people that are using some of our technology, I'm hoping I can show you a few things that you might want to you can try out on Monday morning. Is the idea, but I think the key here is that like a lot of business intelligence, managing data doesn't have to be the realm of the coder or the technical person, or someone who's deep into the various data technologies. And Data Migrator is a very business friendly, no code, drag and drop, GUI oriented way of achieving your key data management objectives in a single unified tool. So I'm going to show you how to connect to data within the web-focused Data Migrator, how to harvest some data, a couple of examples of that, and then how that can integrate straight to the business intelligence layer. So this is Data Migrator. It's part of the web-focused application platform. This is specifically a view that's designed around managing data. And it allows us to connect via adapters to all sorts of different data sources. And basically, it handles all of the technology so that you don't have to. In other words, all the various dialects, all the ins and outs of what it can store and what it can't store, it handles all of that translation and capability with intelligence connections. And once you've connected to a data source, you can start to introspect it here as you're working with data. So in this case, Monday morning, I've been asked to take a snapshot of this entire source system. We've got a large number of tables here, and it's in Microsoft SQL, if you notice. But I don't have to know Microsoft SQL. I don't have to be a certified Microsoft SQL person. But the first thing I might want to do is I can take a look at the data, and I can sample data. I can see what's in my data tables. But also I can do things like data profiling right here, built in a couple clicks away. And I can see the fields that are in my table. I can see the minimum and maximum values. I can see the null counts. And I'll just point out one of the interesting things here is you can notice that the SSN number, the Social Security number, I have some duplicates here. And my member information, that's interesting. But I don't, my membership key is unique. So that means that I've got some members with the same social insurance number. So I might have a data quality issue and I might have to go back to that. It's something I might want to keep in mind as I move forward. But in the data profiling, I can just double check that by doing a key analysis and say, okay, what if I put social security number and address together? And what that tells me is I've got some duplicate addresses and I've got some duplicate social security numbers. But when I put the two of them together, I'm getting 100% unique records, which, to interpret it, that means that I have people with the same social insurance number living at different addresses as different members. So you can do a quick understanding of the data that's coming in, know what the drawbacks are, what is my quality, how much of it is missing, built right into the tool. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a data flow. And this is, again, a canvas where I can drag and drop things on. We're going to be very simple here. Let's take the employee data. And you notice I've got Microsoft SQL on this side. And I might want to grab all of the information because I'm doing a snapshot. And I want to, and this is an important part of the snapshot, even if I'm keeping it, if I'm taking a complete copy, I do want to isolate it with some sort of key. So common practice, you might want to put a snapshot date on on the information. And I'm just going to make that equal to the system current date. There we go. And so now I've got all my source data. I've got a date associated with it. I always like my snapshot date at the top when I create it. So now I have extracted all of the data. I can do transforms. It's a complete robust tool for that. But in my snapshot, I'm just going to create a new target. And if you notice, my default target here is going to be Postgres. And it'll create a brand new table. I've said new here, and we can just run that. And I've gone from Microsoft SQL technology to a Postgres database, open source database. It's just managed to completely create the data model from my source, recreated it in the target. I've added fields to it, and I didn't have to do anything about it. And you can even take a look at that final output file. And you can see I've now got a date in front of it, and I can sample the data. So very quickly, I can create a snapshot of a table. I'm a very lazy person, so I'm not going to do that for all of these tables. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to use the quick copy wizard and say I want to take all of those Microsoft SQL tables, except I've already done the employee table, so I won't do that one. And I will write it out to Postgres, and I will just save that as a job. And what that did is it created a whole series of copy jobs for me very, very quickly. And I can go in and take a look at those. And you can see they're taking a source table, writing it out to Postgres. I can run this. Now, I do have to go in and add that snapshot date to each one of them, but that's not as big a deal. But I've now got code that I can run. And when I submit that code, I can actually take a look at the log because I'm working with a tool that logs everything that it's done. And you can see every table, I got a record count for every single table copied, and it took a total of 16 seconds. And for those technically minded, I was using the bulk load facilities, and I don't have to know anything about bulk loading. And I've created an entire set of snapshot tables in Postgres now. So I can go in Monday morning, grab an entire database worth of tables that are important to my business, very quickly start to create snapshots. And now that I've got all the processes into one flow, I can schedule that flow. So I might want to run this flow on a regular basis. And I want to do it, let's say I want to do daily snapshots, or I could do a monthly snapshot if you notice. And I could email me a message in the log file when I start. I can email me on completion, but probably more importantly, I want to know, send me an email when it fails so I can go and fix it before anybody else sees it. So I can create data flows to take snapshots. I can string those together into process flows, and then you can schedule those process flows, email out the results, and set these to run on a regular basis. So that was case one. But databases aren't the only thing that we want to create, we want to capture data on. I think in this modern world, we also want to capture data from a lot of cloud-based applications. So let's take a quick look at some of the adapters. And I have an adapter down here, which is a RESTful API adapter. And one of the adapters that I've created is to FinHub. And you can see I've given it the name Financial Hub or FinHub, and you can see this URL that I'm pointing it to. And just for those that, this is the finhub.io. This is the URL address. You can go here. It's basically an API that you can use for free from a development perspective, or pay for all sorts of really interesting, rich stock, currency, cryptocurrency trading information on the fly. So my boss is really interested in the stock market and wants me to have in my dashboards a view of some of the current stock prices and some of the trending. So I'm going to harvest that information as well. And I'm just going to test this to make sure it's working. So I've gone out over the internet, connected to FinHub on the cloud, and done a handshake, and yep, everything is working on that connection. Now, I have some data here called FinHub stock data. So this is the metadata from that RESTful web service. And just like we can with a data file, I can sample that data. So again, I don't have to know how to work with RESTful APIs. I can connect to them and harvest the data just like anything else. Now, in this case, in an API, I want to tell it what information I want. So my boss is interested in Facebook, which is Metacorp. And it comes back. This is what the result comes back with. And it gives me the current stock price, the high and the low, the open and the close of the previous day. So I now have a data source. Can I harvest data from this? Well, absolutely. Just like we did from a database to a database, I can use the FinHub stock data connector here. And the same information that I was pulling from a database, I can bring over and read in my current price, my high, my low, and my open. But in this case, what I do is I select which stocks I want via the where clause or the if clause, depending on what you're using. And in this case, I'm going and getting the stock price for Facebook. I could do other things here. I could do, let's do Twitter, just for comparison. Oh, and if Tim doesn't mind, I am just going to check on my Bitcoin investments as well. And I can sample that data. And I now have 3 stock quotes. I've got my Meta stock quote. You can see Twitter is at 44. Meta right now, because I went out over the cloud and got the quote right now for the data is 177. Bitcoin is at 24, which is a little down from a little up from the open this morning. It was down yesterday. So I can harvest any information from this API. But once I've got this API up and running, what I can do is I'm dealing with information that doesn't make sense to do a daily snapshot. So I'm taking a snapshot every 15 minutes. And we can take a look at the output of that snapshot is coming into my Meta snapshots because I'm keeping track of my Facebook data. And that's my table right here. And it's in Postgres. And you can see I've captured a whole number of records. This is actually a job that has been running for the last few days, collecting information every 15 minutes for me. And I've got my snapshot time and what it is. And just as before, how much data have I collected? Well, let's do a little data profiling on it. And you can see I started collecting on, I think that's Tuesday. I'm still collecting now. You can see it's the 11th. A few minutes ago, it actually went and got another sample and stored it. So I'm harvesting my information from the cloud, from an API. And you can do this for any API. But let's take a look at this data management. The ability to capture data and harvest data is built into the Web Focus world. And it's exactly the same in Web Focus as it is in the data management tool. And you can see here, I've got my Meta snapshots, and I can sample the data on my BI platform. I can see all the data that's there. But probably more importantly is I can create content. I can put this content onto a dashboard. And let's open that up. I'm just doing a line graph. The line graph is looking at the data over 3 days. So you can see that on Tuesday, it opened at about 170 and then really went down. And you can see that I've got my high and low for the day on the graph as well. And then yesterday, it opened low and jumped up to the 180. I'd have to go take a look at the news to find out why that happened. This is real data collected over time. And then up to the minute today, you can see that we had a little bit of a bump this morning, but it's been slowly drifting down. So I can put this information on my boss's desktop and integrate it with all the other information that I'm harvesting. So you can harvest information from virtually any data source at any point. And just for fun, maybe I want to do the open and the previous close. And again, you can modify it and things. So there's a look at all the data that I've collected for Facebook. So we connected to data, we can look at data, we can introspect it, we can get a feel for the data quality. We can harvest data from various data sources and databases across the system. We can create entire flows that basically will snapshot an entire database very, very quickly and go from one technology to another. And then we went out and we did an API connection to a financial hub, and we harvested data over a period of time where we could then integrate that information. So a lot of customers say, well, can I go get this cloud information? Well, if they do have an API and you can connect to it, you can start harvesting and taking snapshots of that information and start to augment your core information if you've already started that. And all of that can be done with web-focused data migrator. And hopefully you can open up these tools and start harvesting this information into data snapshots on Monday. Because the last thing I wanted to talk about was why do I think data snapshots are important? Well, and I talked to a lot of customers, and some of the things I'm hearing is, you know, we're not very mature with our data architecture or our infrastructure. We're just taking copies. And I love that statement because it really, they've actually started the data journey. They just haven't formalized it. They're on the first step. They are starting to do data snapshots. And it's the beginning of a data journey. And what they need to do is figure out what they want to do next. What does business need next? So I don't think it's the fact that they're not very mature. It's really more along the lines of they've started to make the journey. They just haven't realized that they're on the data journey, and they didn't need to figure out what the rest of the roadmap's going to look like. I need a centralized source of my data. I need a data warehouse. And I absolutely agree. A data warehouse is an extremely powerful tool, especially when you combine it with mastering the data, single view of the customer, that sort of thing. But in a lot of cases, augmenting that with the snapshot layer that feeds the data warehouse can be extremely important. It also allows you to have a central source of all my data very, very quickly. So I see it as one of the first steps in terms of building a data warehouse. Don't know where to start to manage my data. You know what? Harvesting all of the information and all of your information assets is a great way of at least getting an inventory and knowing what you have, and then starting to work out, well, what do I need to work on? What way do I put into a data warehouse? Starting with a data snapshot, maybe a data lake to store the snapshots in is a great place to start while you work out where you want to go. And then the other one that sort of crosses my plate a lot is my executives want us to do advanced analytics, machine learning. I mean, this is a hot topic. I want to get into an advanced analytics. And I normally turn around and say, well, where is your data? Where is all your data? Because artificial intelligence, machine learning needs lots and lots of data to work from. You have to have harvested your data in order to start that. So it's very difficult to get into advanced analytics without at least having a single place where you can go into and introspect all of your data. And it's a really good start. And you can start to do your advanced analytics on top of snapshots as you start to work out the rest of your data roadmap. Back to you, Tim.